Welcome to Jim Bob's Garden.
Alright, welcome back to Jim Bob's Garden. Today we're going to work on some kale. My intention is to get some kale planted. It is the 16th of August and well, according to the package, this is the time to start planting kale. Now, it's still real hot out, so I'm having a hard time believing it. But we're going to go for it and see what happens. Worst comes to worst, I'll waste a little bit of seed. But I do want to get some kale going because we used the heck out of some kale. All right, so let me swap this around real quick. All right. All right, first off, let me show you my existing kale. This is what we had. And you can see it's kind of gotten spindly and not much of it there. Still is producing some. And we've eaten the heck out of this. I'm going to tell you what, we really like the tall skinny one, which, hang on one second, I'm going to go look and we're going to get the name for it. This is where we're going to plant it. Now what I've done to this garden bed, first off, is I went through and I put a lot of mulch. I'm sorry, I take that back. I put a lot of compost into the dirt, and then I ground it into the dirt, and then I covered it with a layer of mulch. Now you can see down at this end, it's got a lot of pine straw in it, kind of as an experiment, and plus I've got a lady's yard that I mow that also has a lot of pine straw in it, so I thought I'd try that out down here. And then over here at this end, it's primarily just grass and leaves. Now, this is not the compost that I put down. I actually had some finished compost that I worked into the entire garden. One of my wagon loads basically went into this garden. All right. So now what I did down here, you might be able to see that I've got some dark dirt right across the top. And what I did is I went ahead and cleared out the mulch. Sorry, brain fart there. So what I did was I went ahead and cleared out the mulch and then laid down seed, and then over the top of that I put about a ½ inch of basically a organic potting soil. This is the organic potting soil that I'm using, which has worked really well in pots. Seems to be some pretty good stuff. It's got some worm casting in it and so on. We've really liked it recently on some of the stuff we've done. So because my dirt is kind of iffy, I decided this might be a better way to go ahead and do it. And then we're going to go ahead and do it over here. Basically, like I said, all I did was take and scoot the mulch back. Now one of the problems I have here is that a lot of the garden dries out real bad, primarily because of the soil. We've gotten tons of rain, and yet somehow or other the top couple inches stays dry, which, as you can see, has done a lot to kind of kill off a lot of stuff around here. Like my strawberries are looking rough, and keep in mind it's been raining constantly. I think we've got more rain this year than just about any other year. Now that may be what's killing it. Maybe there's too much rain, but I think what's going on is it's just not holding the rain because it's so hot in the summertime. Now Florida is famous for basically summer's killing everything off. Not a lot will grow through the summertime, but we're going to give this kale a shot because the kale did keep going like I showed you. Onions are still growing. I've got my basil still coming. Tomatillos are working well. My beans are kind of iffy. Squash is doing okay, but we're going to go ahead and try and do the kale today and see what kind of comes out of it. All right, so what I'm going to do today is I'm going to plant some kale. It is about that time of year. As you can see, what I've done is I've gone ahead and basically moved the mulch back so that I've got a spot to plant it in. I have recently added compost to the garden. to this particular garden bed and then ground it in. I didn't feel like I had a choice. I'm trying not to do any digging, but unfortunately the dirt just wasn't really supporting a lot. So I think for now at least, what I'm going to do is I'm going to keep adding compost and digging it in over the next year or so and try and really enrich this soil. In the meantime, I've added a lot of mulch on top. As you can see down here, there's a lot of pine straw and grass and leaves in this. This is just what I got from mowing my neighbor's yard. So the plan is going to be to go ahead and plant some of this kale. Like I said, it's about the right time to plant it, and we're going to see what comes up. Now, for those of you who haven't had kale, I was not a big fan of kale, but I'd never tried it. I'm like, yeah, you know, that's one of them, you know, hipster type foods that everybody loves if you're a hipster. You know, I was born and raised on lettuce and cabbage, but after trying it out, I found that we really like it. Now, I've got two varieties of kale. Both are organic. Let me show you what I've got. All right, I've got lacinato kale, and this has the long, skinnier leaves, which we really seem to like a lot better. And then the red Russian kale. All right, both of them are organic. And this one is okay. It makes a bigger, broader leaf, but I think the flavor on the other one, on the lacinato, is a lot better. So we're going to go ahead and plant this in. And what I'm going to do, which I don't know whether or not this is necessarily a good idea, but I'm going to go ahead and cover this with some potting soil. Mostly kind of to lift it up a little bit. I'm leaving it in the furrow so that hopefully it'll hold the moisture in and keep it somewhat cool. But obviously I want to be able to get the water to the seed and then have the seed have some place to come up without having to fight its way through the mulch. It says to plant these about every 3 inches or so. Obviously it doesn't have to be perfect. You just throw them out down every so often. They make a pretty good sized plant. I'll show you here in a second. So, really don't want them too close. But just like with anything else when you're planting, you want to plant so that you've got a few to pull out, or if they happen to die for various reasons, you've got some backup there. Not all seeds will germinate, and not all plants will grow. It's just part of nature. Alright, there's that planted. Now out of this, well, we had a row that was about probably 8 foot long, and I imagine we probably got, oh gosh, I don't even know, probably 30, 40, 50 salads out of that, something like that. We pretty much ate it all spring long. So I'm excited to get some more growing. Now like I said, what I'm going to do, I'm going to go ahead and cover it up with just about a ½ inch of potting soil. Now I could have done this with regular dirt. Problem is that I would have to either move mulch back to pull dirt out, or get some dirt from somewhere else. And a little bit of potting soil I think will do my garden some good. And it's easy. Works out pretty good. This is some organic potting soil we got from, I can't remember, Lowe's or Walmart, one of the two. And we've been real pleased with it. It seems to do a really good job of growing things. Well, we've had a couple that were like kind of iffy. So we're going to leave it like that. And then I'll show you what I did over on this side when I plant the other kale. So basically, once you got your compost or your mulch down, and like I said, I've already dug compost in the soil, you just basically kind of scoot it aside, rearrange it a little bit, make yourself a little furrow in the compost. I'm sorry, in the mulch. Mulch, compost, you know, fusion to fusion. Compost is basically mulch that's been allowed to rot. So not all composting materials make good mulch, and not all good mulching materials make good compost. Pine needles, for example, one of the reasons I put them as mulch rather than compost is that pine needles take forever to break down because they got like a wax on the outside of them that keeps them from breaking down as easily. While it does keep them from breaking down, it does make them into an excellent mulch because they don't disappear as quick as grass will. Grass is a pretty short-lived mulch because it breaks down real quick, goes down in the soil. But with my soil being what it is, that's something that I want. I want to get as much organic material down into that soil as possible. All right, now on this side, we're going to plant some of our red Russian kale. All right, so just an update on our kale. It's gosh, what is today? November, middle of November. It's the day before Thanksgiving, actually, Wednesday. So I think it's like the 23rd. So we tried planting kale, and for the most part, it didn't work. We got some kale plants over here. I planted the red Russian kale, and it came up, which you can see that right here. And the bugs have kind of gotten to it. But I also planted in this same area, I planted a lot of my garlic, and nothing seemed to come up. In this end of the garden, I had a lot of problems with things growing at all. So it may be a soil issue, or it may be that it just wasn't the right season, it was too hot, I don't know. But for the Lacetino kale, I've got nothing growing here. I've got some grass and some weeds growing, and that's about it. So we may have to go back to the drawing board and figure out what's going on. Now, I do remember last year when I planted the kale, the Russian red came up first, and then the Lacetino came up after that. But it's been like 2 months, 3 months since we planted it, so I would have thought something would have come up by now. So I'm kind of disappointed there. Now, my red Russian, if you get in here close, you can see that I got an issue with bugs getting to it. It's producing a lot of kale, but I am having the bug issue. So what I've done is I've taken some of my oregano and I laid it, because I had to trim it up anyway. When I trimmed it up, I took a lot of that oregano, I'm laying it out all along the Russian kale. You can see it down over here. This is all cut oregano, and I'm hoping that the smell of that will help keep the pests away. Now, it hasn't kept us from being able to harvest. You can see I got a couple of bad leaves, but we've taken a lot of kale out of this already, and it does produce a good amount of kale until it dies off. So I'm not really sure what's going on. I think it may be an issue with the soil at this end of the garden, so we're going to have to work on that. But I did want to let you know kind of where we're at and what has gone on. I do have some more I planted in pots that I'm going to try and see if I can get it started that way and then plant the plants out here. But that Lacetino kale is supposed to be a winter kale, but like I said, in all of these little holes here, I also planted garlic. And I've got one little baby growing here, and I've got one fairly good sized one growing over here. And that's all that has come up out of all of that. So we shall see. I do want to show you this here. Can you come here? So last year, or I'm sorry, this year, but earlier in the season, we did plant a lot of lettuce. And we had lettuce growing all through here. And if you notice, I let it go to seed. And I think I talked about that on another video. But you can see that I've got volunteer lettuce coming up here and then a couple other spots throughout. So we'll see what ends up happening. But hopefully, that's kind of what I'm trying to go for, is to get certain areas to just keep coming back. And hopefully that'll be what happens. But as it stands right now, the Macetino kale has been a dismal failure. I'm hoping that with the weather cooling down now, the seeds will get to the point where they feel like it's time to germinate and we'll actually get some. But we'll see how that works out. In the meantime, thanks for stopping by Jim Bob's Garden. Like, subscribe. Let me know what you think, and if you got ideas on how to do things better, drop me a line, let me know. Thanks again for stopping by and grow something.